Hi, it's Allison from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Today we sprung ahead 1 hour for daylight savings, and it always throws me off, even though it's just 1 hour. So I am gonna do a video today primarily for myself, one of relaxation, kind of getting in the mode, ready for the day. I just felt like I needed to do this for myself, so I thought I'd take you on my journey. What I'm going to be doing is a watercolor warm-up in my Canson XL mixed media journal. This is 98-pound paper. If you have anything over 90-pound paper, whether it's watercolor paper or mixed media, that's great. If it's a bit heavier and if it's a cotton paper, ideally for watercolor, but use what you have. This is just going to be a fun warm-up, and the 98-pound book is what I like to use because I can then cut up the images that I've painted later for collage. So I am going to be just showing you what I have started with. Now you can use any kind of watercolor. I'm just going to bring you guys in closer. So just whatever watercolors you have available. And if you want to work along with me, we're just going to be doing whatever we feel like, whatever I feel like today. I'll probably start with doing some botanicals, just really abstract with colors that I'm craving in the moment. So this book I had purchased because it is 98 pounds. I was really into doing cutouts for collage, and it's just been a really great practice working in this lighter weight book, because I know this is not the type of paper that I would paint a painting to sell, but it is work that is on such a great weight of paper that I could cut it out later. So I'd shown this, I think, in one of my videos before. Maybe my son and I were doing sea life. So these are very colorful fish, puffer fish, angler fish. I'm learning all about different types of fish and ocean creatures, and I had asked my son if he wanted to cut these out with me, and he sort of moved on to another project, and they're still in the journal, but I think they're going to be just great to go back to. So you can see I didn't paint on both sides with the intention of being able to cut these out later. I was exploring different ideas with blooms and botanicals, and so this type of flower is one that I just kind of made up, and it felt really good with the type of brush I use. I am just going to grab my round, excuse my band-aid, the dryness here, excuse my round number 12, or sorry, excuse my band-aid. This is my round number 12 Princeton art brush, and this is my go-to brush. I love the larger round size, so that's what I'm going to be using, but use whatever brush you have. I feel totally out of my groove today, so this is good for me just to slow down and talk to you all and bring you into my world of wellness practice of, art therapy here. So these again were botanicals I was playing around with, but I haven't yet finished. I love to go in afterwards and experiment with different colors of paint pens, but you could use pencil, you could use any kind of a permanent pen. And then we are experimenting with owls and other botanicals, and it's just really what you feel like doing in the moment. I'm gonna just tilt my camera ever so slightly and see if I can kind of fit you in. I'm gonna take you up a little bit, and then that way you should be able to see my full pages as long as I behave myself and I don't tilt my pages. This was another sort of experimental shape. It's more of a triangle shape, and then I added line work, and I'm going to go back to it. And just this practice is super relaxing. It also gets you out of your head. It makes you feel good because you can always paint over these with, say, acrylic paint, because this is just watercolor and acrylic line work. You can, cut them up into little cards, shapes, artist trading cards, which they're called ATCs if you're not familiar with the acronym. We were doing jellyfish, my son and I was playing around with some turtles. Want to learn horses. This was from a video I had done with you all cleaning off my brush. And then here's some where I would like to go through and do the stem. And so I like to use, this is a really wonderful pen I purchased at the Dollarama here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, my 0.5mm Studio Gel pen. This is a very, very fine black permanent pen. I wouldn't say it's, I wouldn't say that it doesn't have a risk of smudging. So it's a pen that, you could use in your work, but just know if you are going to put wet media over top at any point in time, it might smudge. So this is just an example of how I finish some of my botanicals. I love just a long, thin line. And then I do almost a triangular motion when attaching the petals. And then I'll experiment with, say, a thicker pen. This one I had just purchased, this Lumo Color Permanent by Stettler, and this is a wonderful, more waterproof type pen. So one that I hope to try in my work where there will be less risk of smudging. So this one I had purchased just off of Amazon, and it's made in Germany. Seems like a really good pen, but I'm going to check it out. This tip is a little bit of a chisel tip. So, sometimes I'll sit down in the evening and just start by doing watercolor shapes. And then the next day I'll come back, and if I just need 5 minutes just to myself, or just to kind of, I almost think of it as like a meditative practice where I just am kind of turning off my mind and just letting go and coming back to whatever colors, whatever shapes I put down, and then going over top of it with whatever I feel like in the moment. Mixed media supplies are wonderful because you can layer so much. Watercolor is a wonderful base layer. If you remember, it is water soluble. Watercolor, it will move with water soluble products that you put over top. So already I'm going to move on from that. This is an example of just the other night I was just needing to get out of my head and play around with different ideas. So I used this book also, started to use it as an art journal of sorts. And again, I can cut these out and collage them later. If I'm happy with the line work, which I am, I had used a dropper bottle from acrylic ink. I like how that turned out, and I like the mix of the greens surrounding this. So I might just go back to this in a couple days or, whenever, and decide how I want to use these pieces, or, as a painting. Here's one I just felt like putting down colors. This was a practice I had done a couple nights ago. I was really tired. It was very dark and cold, and I just thought, I'm gonna just put down some bright colors just to make me feel happy. And it was wonderful. I let them dry, and now looking at this, it's a base for me to do mark making over top. So keeping an affordable, coil book is helpful that you can see, and some affordable watercolors, even the little travel sets, they're very, how do you say, they don't take up a lot of space, they're non-toxic. Watercolor's just a great practice if you're looking for something more for relaxation. So I'll just take you through some of my botanicals because that is what I'm quite comfortable with. Just gonna make sure that you're sort of seeing most of my view here. And just gonna settle in and have a little sip of my coffee. I'm gonna activate my watercolors. So I'm using a mix of watercolors, mostly from the oceanpaper.com and from Beam Paints, which are these cute little canvas beeswax wrapped paint stones, they call them. And that is that Canadian company, Beam Paints, B-E-A-M. And I will link them in the description. And so let's just start with, this green is calling my name, Spring Green, which is very appropriate for today. And I'm just gonna, again, make sure you're in my view. So if you're following along with me, you may want to use a round brush or whatever brush is comfortable for you and colors that you just are craving in the moment. And as you can see, I am just pushing down with my round brush and kind of letting the paint and water do its thing. Now I work really quickly, and that's a good way to kind of get out of your head, because this is, if you think about it, not so much as doing a painting, but just playing around with, say, watercolors maybe you haven't used in a long time, and, you know, playing with different marks. So playing with maybe just this long kind of a mark that my brush is making, and just experimenting with your brush, getting comfortable with holding the round brush in your hand, and also getting comfortable with the amount of pigment on your brush. So right now I'm going to create circles with quite a bit of water. And I do this often, so I have had a lot of practice with this. But just getting color down is great. Just got a little bit. And sometimes when everything is still wet, I just pick up a color that maybe I wouldn't normally pick up. So for instance, maybe this orange color here, this darker burnt orange. And I drop it in and I just let the watercolor do its thing. This one's almost dry, but I'm just gonna drop in. And when I mean by dropping in, sometimes I'm just gently touching my brush down and getting that color into the wet watercolor. This one is quite dry, but I can still try it. And another thing I like to do is wait for these botanical shapes to totally dry. And then I'll go back over top with another layer of watercolor in a similar shape petal right over top, but slightly offside. And that's just it's sort of a discovery I had made when I was just playing around with my watercolors. And I just had purchased some of these sweet little shells from Beam Paints. This one I have quite a bit of water in. This is, oh, shoot, I had quite a bit of water in there. Okay. I have Orchid, which is a gorgeous black shimmery color, but it's coming all over. So I'm just gonna quickly regroup and get this color off my brush. So this is a beautiful, beautiful metallic by Beam Paints. And it has a slight pink tinge because I had a little bit of pink left when I made homemade spray inks in my water bottle. And when I was preparing my watercolors, I gave them a little spritz before turning on my camera. And the pink really mixed in with this gorgeous shimmery watercolor in the shell. And so I don't know what color this is. Let me just see. I'll figure it out. It's really, really pretty. So this would be, where is it on my Beam Paint swatching? This would be, let me just think. So I'd used wax over here. It kind of dulled the look of the shimmer paint. So Wet Grizzly, no, Gold Mica. It might be, let me just see if I have it in here. Oh yeah, here it is. Oh, this is Wild Salmon. So Wild Salmon by Beam Paints. And again, this is called a paint stone. I'm just gonna see if you can see through. I feel totally off my game. Good thing you guys are a great audience, because that time change really threw me off today. I am very distractible. I'm just gonna put down that Wild Salmon, that beautiful color, and go back to this shimmery black, which is called Orca, which is also by Beam Paints. And you can see you can purchase their paint individually in a seashell. Isn't that just so cool? So I'm not going to turn it over, but those little seashells are really neat. And of course they're refillable. So Beam Paints, they don't use any plastic with their packaging. And so my brush still had Wild Salmon on it, but if you just kind of check it out, oh, like the shimmer in here is beautiful. And what I do is I like to work on 2 books at a time, 2 paintings at a time, 2 pages at a time, at least, sometimes more. And it just gets me out of my head. And again, working fast will get you out of your head. Right now, I've sort of slowed down. I'm gonna dip into some of this really bright kind of reddish color from the ocean paper. And I'm just gonna dip onto, I'm gonna drop into the Wild Salmon with that red and just kind of make it more interesting. So when I go back to it, it's not just one color. Although these paints are so beautiful, I mean, you don't really have to do anything other than get the paint on paper, and that is art in itself. I really feel like dipping into this cerulean blue and just dropping it into the Orca while it's still wet. And so that's my 1 page, and I have quite a bit of color on my brush, and what I like to do is mix whatever's on my palette. So that's the Orca and the cerulean blue, and I'm just gonna start. Normally I start left to right, but today I'm just still looking to see if you guys are there. I'm going to, I wish I had like a little paper clip. Let me just see. Oh, I do. Whew, phew. I do a lot of art journaling, and I recommend clipping down your paper if you do enough work that your pages start to kind of buckle up. And so that just kind of keeps them in place while you're working. And so I'm just going to put down this shape fairly quickly, this blue. And I'm going to add more water on my brush and use up the blue that's in here and do just another shape. I like to do botanicals with, you know, 1 big bloom at the top, 1 leaf or petal, whatever you want to call it. These are very abstract. And then drop different colors within. So let's just maybe drop in some of this dark green. And when these dry, it's really interesting. Because I have dark green on my brush, I'm going to do another little one just in the corner here, maybe with another row of leaves or petals. Let that dry. Just going to move this over a little bit. And Again, I have a lot of color on my brush. I might just pour off some of this wild salmon and pink and see what color I get. This is a really great way to use up watercolor that, you know, if you, I guess if you paint realistically and you have a pan of watercolor and you'd like to add in, you know, just one color and not have them mix, this is a great way to kind of just get some color down on your paper. Right now, my inner dialogue is like, that sounds kind of stupid what you just said. So funny how we are our own worst critics. You know, I'm tired today and I should be feeling proud of myself that I'm doing a video and putting myself out there. But my inner critic today is like, what are you talking about? And so art is a great way to turn off your inner critic. It's also a way of turning it on when you don't want it turned on, but then it will give you practice, because it's all about observing what negative thoughts are coming into your head and being aware of them, being mindful of them, and sort of acknowledging them, not trying to get rid of them, but acknowledging that they are there and then letting it go. I worked in mental health nursing at the Children's Hospital for many years, and you know, I suppose sometimes when we had these teenagers come in and they were dealing with mental health issues, we would just talk about mindfulness, and we would do art together, which was really cool. And it was a great way to get the kids to open up and maybe tell you things that they wouldn't otherwise if you were just sitting almost in an interview position. And it was through my mental health nursing that I learned a little bit about mindfulness and probably the relaxation that you can get with art. And with kids, of course, you know, even young adults, they don't have that inner critic. And it's pretty cool to just see them sit down and create and not overthink anything and be totally happy with what they have done. Whereas as adults, we just overthink. We have a tendency to overthink. Okay, so that is an example of just getting, you know, botanical shapes down, and then I'll be able to go in later and do my stems and just decide how I want to, you know, use these pages. Do I want to, you know, cut around just in the size of an artist trading card and make it into something different and use this color as like, you know, a jumping off point? Sometimes it's easier than staring at this blank page when you're creating a painting. You know, you can go back with acrylic paint and just paint over this if you don't like it, or you can use gesso. You can use colored gesso. So just, again, knowing that this is just a practice, which hopefully you're enjoying, hopefully you're relaxed and maybe using supplies that you wouldn't otherwise. I really like starting my day with this practice, and it doesn't have to be, again, any shape. It can just be getting color down on your page, which is very much my style of painting, my art poetry style. You know, this is an example of just getting color down on my page in a composition and going back to it and finishing it when I feel like it. So we could, you know, do a couple of these today, possibly. I'm just gonna set this aside to dry, and I'll show you some other things I've been up to. Let me see here. What we can do is just, I'm going to use my Arches 140-pound watercolor paper because I have it handy. I love it. And I'm just going to do some color craving exercises where we're just putting color down and not really overthinking it. So I'm going to start with this beautiful color that's already in my palette, this Orca, this black shimmery color. and it's sort of mixed in with some greens. I'll just I'm just gonna pour out some of that. I'm gonna mix in this wild salmon, which will be wild. Get some water on my brush. And I might just darken it up a little bit. I'll go with a bit more of the orca. And maybe I'll go with, if you're wondering about this palette, this came with my set of Beam paints. And I don't know what this material, a lot of you probably can look at this and say, oh, that's porcelain, or I'm not sure what this is, but it's a great little palette. So what I'm gonna do is just start with, I often start a composition this way. I might just start with one over here, and I'm just gonna talk you through my process. So right now I'm just getting this color down. It's quite dark. I feel like dripping it. So I'm gonna drip it, and I think I'm gonna do almost like a garden in the sky. So I'm gonna put my color down and also repeat it somewhere else. That's just sort of my thinking process. And then I don't paint with a lot of blue, so I might challenge myself to paint with a little bit more. Actually, what do I want to do? Maybe I'll paint with this really beautiful, I think this is like a cobalt turquoise, and I believe this is either Ocean Paper or Stoneground Paint Co. And I'm not going to get too much into the color descriptions just for the purpose of this video, because it will just really distract me too much from what I'm doing. But I'm just getting that color down, and immediately I want to add in this green, apple green color. This is more like a gouache, and I'm quite certain this is Stoneground Paint Co. I'm just gonna get that green down in here and just kind of scrubbing it in and not really overthinking my composition. Because I have watercolor over here, I could turn that into something, or I can just, because this is high quality watercolor paper, I can just kind of rub it off. And so if you're painting along with me, I want you to just think about colors you're craving in the moment. So, you know, just going with it. Right now, I am craving orange, which is kind of a brave move to put in, because I know it's going to create probably a dark green with some of the navy here, the orca. And I'm just going to get my brush quite wet and branch it out, maybe adding it in up there, letting the colors blend. I'm gonna add in, whoops, another sort of shade of the orange, something a bit darker, maybe just dropping it in. Kind of squinting my eyes, deciding where I want to put the colors. Might do another little color over there. And looking at where I need more contrast, I can drop in darker colors. I have a little wee hair there, so I'm just gonna lift it up. And I'm gonna drop in a dark, maybe a dark green. Maybe I'll put it over here. So we're just putting down color where we want it and not overthinking that it has to look like anything. I'm just gonna switch out to some clean water. And maybe what I wanna do is drop in metallics. So I might just see this wild salmon from Beam Paints. You know, it's a very similar color and that I have down, and I'm just gonna drop it in through here, through the middle. Not in too many places, I just like a hint of shimmer. And you can see I'm using a lot of pigment and a lot of water. I'm using higher quality watercolors, which I know is not accessible to everybody. And it does tend to look more like gouache the way I do it, because it's got quite a bit of pigment. I might just put in this kind of lighter green. I don't know, we'll be brave, we'll just experiment. This is becoming sort of like more of a fall painting with these colors, even though I'm feeling spring today. And I'm not like loving this, but I know I can go back to it, or I can paint over it again. I'm just experimenting. I'm gonna drop in this really bright blue because I don't use much blue in my work. Just drop it in and see what that looks like. And always repeating what you love. I think I like that in there, but I don't love it enough to repeat it anywhere else on my paper. I've got a lot of water going on down here, so I'll just blot it up a bit. And I forgot, usually I have my little watercolor sheet to clean my brush off. So I'll just use this to clean off my brush and create a new painting. And looking at this, do I feel like, I think it needs like a really, really light, maybe an orangish yellow. Try and get it lighter. Maybe just a little bit of that yellow. Where do I want it? Up here. And am I relaxed? Yes. Am I loving this composition or these colors? I feel like I like the composition, but the colors I'm not loving. Although if I go back with mark making, I can make it into something that I really enjoy. So it was just kind of good play, just getting colors down, letting them dry, and being able to go back to them. I'm just gonna see if I can, I'll just move you down. And just use the back of this painting. And let's just say we are gonna finish this little painting. Or maybe just start it, adding some mark making. So again, what I had just painted, when it dries, this is sort of my process. I would go back in with some paint pens. So here I'm gonna do some polka dots, and I like to put white polka dots where I see contrast. And because I often add a similar color in the same place, I often add colors more than once in my work. I can zero in on, say, adding polka dots into these darker, almost Payne's gray, this dark navy color, and I can add it in a few places, which, you know, design elements that repeat is a principle of art. I can hear my little pup, Oakley, sometimes with the weather changes and the dryness, I can hear him doing, it's called reverse sneezing, I think. So I feel for him, if you can kind of hear him in the background. Okay, so I added that in, and then I might go in with, say, my black pen. I just kind of feel like doing this line work down here, maybe adding on some little petals, playing around with this new pen. This is that Staedtler Lumo Color Permanent. And I'm gonna get my gold, I have a paint pen. I wasn't planning on doing mark making, so I'm a little disorganized. I love adding gold moons in my work, so I'm gonna add a little moon up here with my paint pen. And sometimes you can add that gold back in another area if you want. I'm just gonna leave it there. And I'm gonna do, let me just see in here. I'm gonna use my water-soluble pencils. So any kind of water-soluble pencil. And I'm gonna do something I love to do, which is these kind of roses, kind of loose, kind of, I just try not to overthink it. So it's almost like a big scribble over this area. I just wanted that color. And then I'm gonna go, oops, I'm just gonna see if my pup needs to go out here. I'm gonna do another one here in this pink. Okay, just excuse me for a sec. Okay, no, he's okay. So I'm just going over top of this dried watercolor with mark making supplies. Always want to make sure that the underlayer is dry, especially before using paint pens. And I am enjoying this so far. I'm gonna add in my little birds, so I'll probably add one maybe right here. And I like to do one sort of on the edge over here, almost like it's on a cliff, kind of abstract birds. I like to add 3. And I might add some line work, kind of going down over here. And I might add a little bit of those just because I'm playing around with this chisel tip pen. I'm gonna add a little bit of bronze beside it. And immediately I feel like it's too much bronze. I might add white beside the others. And maybe some bronze down here. And I'm gonna do, let's just see, maybe a more neutral rose up here. This really pretty gray, this water-soluble gray. And my intention right now is just play, experiment with supplies I have, more than making this a final piece. And I'll probably, I'm just stepping back here. I like to do little rainbows sometimes in my work, or little arches. I'm just trying to decide. I might use my white Posca pen and just do a little bit of line work, connecting the birds, or whatever they are, butterflies. I'll probably finish this video a little early and just check in on my pup. I know there's not a lot you can do when they have that reverse sneezing, that breathing stuff, but reassurance always helps, so give him a little cuddle. So I have those lines which I like, and I might put something like, I don't know, maybe like an arch right in here, and I might use a brighter yellow, make a little thicker of an arch underneath. And I'm just not really overthinking what I'm doing. which can be hard for a lot of us. See, what other colors do I want to add in here? I was kind of feeling like a pop of orange. Oops. Never fails. I often knock something off of my table in a video, but I saved it. I'm gonna do, I bought these pencil highlighters. They're called text liners, and they're not really meant for mixed media, I don't think. They're meant for highlighting pages, but I like them. They're definitely, they're not the best quality. I find they often break off, but that might be because I'm in a dry area here in Calgary. But what I like to do is zero in on a place where I want some neon and maybe something bright in my work. And I might just emphasize, this almost looks like a little tulip here. And that's not showing up too much. So I'm gonna add it in a different area, maybe right in here. So you can see how there's that white mark that the watercolor went around. And I'm just gonna go in and get that neon orange in there. And maybe adding a little bit of that up here. So it's just kind of like, almost like this neon sunshine coming through behind or something like that. So looking at this, there's things that I like about it. There's things that I want to go back and maybe, I'm seeing right here, I could turn this into a flower. So using a water-soluble crayon and just doing some mark making in the shape of an abstract flower, almost like petals coming out. The good thing is, if I'm not keen on it when I'm done, I can just go over top of it with my watercolor brush and turn it into more of a watercolor mark. So right now, just kind of bringing in that yellow to look more like that it was naturally kind of flowing out into that flower shape. And I feel like that brightened up this whole piece. I also see maybe a bit of a feather in here I want to bring out with a lighter turquoise. So I'm going to just sharpen my pencil here. So I normally am pretty good at self-talk, positive self-talk. It's just so funny doing these videos because it's this conversation with myself and sometimes not knowing if I should say what's in my head or keep it in. And the more I get comfortable with these videos, I just sort of say what I'm thinking. Then later I'm like, did I just say that? It's kind of a funny thing. But I think videos are helpful because it's like I'm getting to know that self-dialogue, and am I giving myself the grace that I should be giving myself when I'm creating and doing videos? Probably not today. Today I'm thinking, oh, I'm so tired, I really shouldn't be doing a video. What are people really going to get from this? Which is not typical for me. My dialogue is often very confident. I'm very confident in my art. I'm very confident in teaching my art style because it's what I know best. But, you know, we all have these days, right? And there's quite a bit of water up here. So I think I'm just gonna let this dry. But it gives you an idea of sort of doing mark making over a dried watercolor background. So we'll just set that over here, and I want to go to my little calendar. Another funny thing that I'm thinking right now is I'm probably going to post this video for tomorrow, so I feel like I should show you. Today is Monday, March 11th, and I did discover in my last video, I was saying I'd love to be able to write on this glossy back of the calendar and just a little bit about my day, so I could then put it in my art journal. And these are waterproof enough to be able to do that. And what I was going to say is I'm going to show you Tuesday, March 12th, as well as Wednesday, March 13th, because you may not watch this video for a few days. You may not watch it for a few years, but that's okay. So today is Monday, March 11th, and this is our little inspiration from the 2024 Artist Almanac. I do believe these guys have a Facebook page. Someone had brought that to my attention. So if you look up the 2024 Artist Almanac on Facebook, you can probably join the group if you're interested in, you know, learning a little bit about this artist calendar by all these contributing artists. I'm sidetracking here, but oh, I'll show you. These were from the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I just love the art on here. And I'm gonna grab my art journal. As you know, I have many art journals, and I'm trying to, instead of jump between them, I'm trying to finish them, but that's a challenge. So here's this little accordion journal that I used by taking an old painting, making it into like a concertina book. I took a course, a really short course in how to make these books. Well, I've taken several. I think this one might have been through Helen Wells, although I don't know if she did the stitching on the sides. So I actually can't remember. Maybe I just had, I don't know which video I watched for this book. So I apologize, but do look up how to make your own handmade art journal. It can be a really fun process. But in this, it's just all about play. So in this particular page here, I wrote, love what you do what you love, do it for yourself and inspire others. So that's sort of my, at the time, my artist why. I was playing around with different mark making supplies. You can see actually that orange here is that neon highlighter, that text liner that I was just using. And it's kind of just something that you wouldn't think about, but it's kind of a neat mark making tool. And then this was a page I did last night. I was really inspired by collage, and I took an old little mini painting and I made this vase and was just playing around with collage and flowers. And oddly enough, when I had pulled Saturday, March 9th, it really did match my page. And then Sunday, yesterday, March 10th, it almost matched this page quite nicely. Was it that page? No, this page. I thought that was kind of fun. But what I'm going to do is, now that I know I can do written words and journal on the back here, things that just I want to remember about my day, I'm going to tape this on into my journal, and then I can decide later, do I want to keep this in here or toss it out? So it's just another way to add writing to something that otherwise may just be artwork. So I'm going to just put this one in here as well. I'm just so glad to have found this Color permanent pen, which is waterproof, so it doesn't smudge on glossy surfaces. So I'm going to be doing some art journal pages, hopefully more regularly. And I just thought I'd share with you my little calendar page today. And we could look up, this was a book that I had written, or sorry, that I had read an excerpt out of. So I'm just going to open it randomly. How to Be More Tree, Essential Life Lessons for Perennial Happiness. I'm going to just close my eyes and flip to this page. So this page is referring to the bald cypress tree, and it says, be proactive. Sometimes a bit of time out and self-care is all we need to feel better, but at other times we encounter specific problems that demand practical solutions. Taking the initiative and confronting an issue head-on can be a pretty powerful feeling. The swamp-dwelling bald cypress is a tree that knows how to get things done. Not only has it developed a system to transport air to its roots below the waterline, it's also able to soak up floodwaters, prevent erosion in its watery home, and help get rid of pollution. So that's cool. I've never heard of the bald cypress, but it's just a very, very beautiful, beautiful looking tree, and really, really neat to read these words. I feel like I needed to read this today for myself. Hopefully it resonates a bit with some of you, but talking about you know, taking that time and self-care is so important. What I'm thinking of right now is how when we take the time to be creative and just let ourselves play and explore and experiment, we're also strengthening our roots almost. We're strengthening our ability to problem solve and to get through tough situations when we may not have that time to sit down and do self-care or say create. So just that practice of being mindful, you know, what we had just done earlier in the video by painting those watercolor botanicals or shapes was a practice of self-care. It was a practice of exploration and play, and art is strengthening our ability to problem solve. The way it develops certain areas in our brain, the way it helps produce serotonin and dopamine, those feel-good hormones that can be really tough for some people to produce naturally or sort of on our own. What I want to say is, just like, say, if you do a sport that you love, or you keep active, you exercise, all of those things that you do that are positive for your health, including creativity and art, are gonna help you when situations in life get tough. You know, you're just gonna be stronger for it. So I think that's what I think about when I think of the description with the bald cypress and being proactive, because as, you know, tired as we get sometimes, and as much as we don't feel like it, setting aside that time to take care of ourselves is just so important. So when things are hard, we have that ability to get through it stronger and build up resilience. I kind of want to cheat and go through this little book. It's super cute. Oh, and I love the index here. This is just like artwork in itself, is all of, you know, these mini pictures of these trees. That's really beautiful. So this book, it was illustrated by Annie Davidson, and if you didn't see the last video where I had shown you another page, it's called How to Be More Tree, and I will link it so you can possibly find it for yourself. I also want to pull an art poetry card. So this is from my Art Poetry for Insights and Inspiration Oracle deck, and this box is actually, it's well loved because I have been using it more regularly now. So these are 71 cards of my art. I really like this first one, Keep It Simple. And that is what I had written on the card here, is to keep it simple. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of shuffle these. These cards are thick. They're 350 GSM, which is like thick cardstock. I found the 300 was, you know, prone to ripping, and it was just a bit too thin. 400 GSM, these are this is information for people who, if you're thinking about publishing an art deck, an oracle deck, or tarot cards, 350 is such a great weight. So if you want to know about paper weight, that's your little tip right there. So I'm just going to pull this card, and this one is called Celebrate Small Successes. And this painting, you know, it's really, really simple. It was putting down this acrylic background of colors that I loved in my reticulated style, which is really hard to see on this card, and just doing some botanicals, you know, to kind of make a composition that I loved. And I think of this as like a bouquet. You know, I think about golden red, those colors of celebration, success, and I think it's so important that we do celebrate small successes when we have so much going on in our world. I just realized how much, oh my gosh, how much black orca I'm carrying on my hands. That's so funny. Good thing it's non-toxic beam paints. Funny, I just noticed that. So celebrating small successes is, you know, thinking about, instead of sitting down and feeling like you need to create a whole painting, that's sometimes my mindset, which isn't really sustainable. It's not healthy. But I think of like a small success, for instance, today, maybe just getting a background finish. So say today all we did was color craving exercises, and we have this, you know, unusual base. But this practice of doing this base and being able to come back to it with fresh eyes on another day, you know, this is working towards something bigger. It's working towards eventually finding your style. The more you practice and, for instance, celebrate small successes. So, you know, to me, a small success is setting aside 10 minutes a day for even like a week and just doing this small activity where you get watercolor or paint down on paper, because it all adds up to larger successes down the road. Okay, that was my art poetry card for today, and I'm just trying to decide. I know what I'll do. Just gonna zoom you back out. Something that I'm doing lately, and I consider a small success, is I'm finding works on paper that I need to revamp. This is one that I'm working on right now. It is, I'm just gonna reorganize my desk here. It is similar, if you know Betty Frank's art, Betty Frank's Kraus. Her artwork I was trying to emulate and kind of put my own flair into it. So this page is not done, but this is me taking a painting that I didn't like and painting over it. So I am very close to being done, but I love it way more than if you had seen it before I had put my other layers on it. Just seeing if I can find Betty's book. Okay, where is it? That's so funny. I found it and I was like, oh, I can do this. I can show you Betty Frank's Fields of Flowers book for my video, but now I can't find it. So I'm just gonna show you something else I've been doing, which is with acrylic paint, grabbing some works on paper that you have abandoned maybe. Maybe it's a canvas, maybe it's a wood panel. If you're like me, I started painting mostly on paper because it was affordable. And so here's some examples. Okay. So what I'm going to do is take an old gift card, or say I guess a piece of cardboard, this will do, or let me just see if I can find. This is a tag that I'd purchased a shirt, and this has a really, really great edge. So I'm going to be scraping some acrylic paint and creating new backgrounds to then put aside for basically using these papers as collage for a later project. So what I'm going to do is pick a color I love. So this is Pebeo. It's an acrylic paint. It's cadmium red. And I'm just going to put some very generously on here. Just for fun, I might add a little bit of this Artist Loft Deep Magenta. And I have gloves on, and I'm going to just trim off this little string because it's just going to get in my way. So if you have an old, gift card. Now this, I was doing stencil and gesso underneath, so this is actually coming out quite beautiful. You can see the gesso through the stencil and then putting the acrylic paint over top. That's a beautiful, that could actually be turned into a really sweet little painting. And all we did was go over top with acrylic paint. So I like that more. You can just see the pattern showing through there. I'm going to set this aside, and I probably won't tear this piece up. I'll use it as a card or make a little painting out of it. And then you can see all the paint that's left here. I'm going to grab another piece. You can see this is just cleaning my brush, and I think my son and I were doing collage. And this was a very large sheet of watercolor paper. And instead of throwing it out, I am just going to see what this gives me by putting down acrylic paint over top. And I'm already really loving this. I like neon pink, so I'm just going to add in. Now this is a more costly brand, but using what you have. This is Luminous Opera by Holbein. And I just love how that neon pink picks up and creates such vibrant colors there. I'm just going to clean the paint right off onto the page and make it interesting to me. So you may think this is like, there's a lot of people that would be like, that just looks like child's play, but really that's what you want your brain to be doing when you're painting, is you don't want to overthink what you're doing. And if we could all paint like children and let go, we would find our style much faster. So I really, really like this. I'll probably tear this up and use it in future work. So again, this was a piece of paper that for some reason I had cut up, and it was just play with, my son was probably only 3 or 4 at the time, just had a lot of marks. And now I'll go back to this and it will be a wonderful, collage flower, beautiful reds in here. And you can just use up old paint. You don't have to use expensive paints. So I have, you can see some colors I use all the time. This Liquitex Quinacridone Magenta. I use this color a lot. And I'm really generous with the amount of paint I put on. Whoops. Trying to get the lid on here. I'm gonna have to clean that lid. We'll just do that later today. Okay. And this is a very, very cheap paint, Daler Rowney Simply Acrylic. I think this is one you can buy at Walmart. And I kind of picked the same colors, didn't I? Oh, but the magenta is transparent, so that's really beautiful the way it's coming onto the page. And then I I just feel like this is already so interesting. If you let this dry and put a mat around this area, you know, and drew, say, a white flower with acrylic paint, that is a beautiful little work of art. And we weren't thinking about what was underneath. I am thinking about colors I love. So I love this magenta. That's a color I use a lot. I love pinks and oranges, but this has so much interest underneath. And, you know, all it was marks cleaning my brush, something that, again, would have maybe been tossed in the garbage. So I'm just gonna let this dry. And we'll do another one with a different color maybe. Well, actually, I'll just get this off my card. So this, again, is like, I was thinking I was taking a course through Laura Horn art. I love Laura Horn's work. And so let's just get this paint off down here, and then we'll add on another color. So, you know, if you only have, say, I don't know, 20 minutes to create, or 10 minutes, you know, getting out some acrylic paints and a gift tag or something that has, you know, cardboard, piece of cardboard, and just playing around with paint and creating new backgrounds. So this one is Artist Loft Copper. I'll just put that one on this side here. And I like how some of the blue watercolor kind of shows through. And this will be just a great, again, a great background for a future piece. And you can etch in. So, you know, if you want that blue to show through, you can do what's called etching, which is taking the corner before it fully dries. I'm not really loving that, so I might etch something a little different. So I'll go back over. I like that better. It's kind of like an abstract mountain range or something. And so I can use that again in my collage art. So I'll set that aside and let it dry. And I like the idea of kind of going through the rainbow in my head of, okay, we did a lot of red and magenta. Let's just flip over to orange. I'll see, do I have some orange? So this again is slightly more expensive, so use what you have, but I love the neon orange. This is Luminous Orange by Holbein. And then this one is a very affordable Artist Loft Vermilion. Ooh. And the back was just, I believe, practice from, again, Laura Horn's classes. And I'm going to just not clean off my color from before and just see what happens. And that neon orange, that's pretty cool the way it comes through. Okay, so now we have like orange collage paper to go back to. And again, this does not take long. It's a great way to use up paints that maybe, you know, I know for myself, I'm really enjoying watercolor much more than acrylic. And I have thought about just at some point, you know, moving along my acrylic paints, donating them. I'm still not at that point. I don't know if I will be at that point. but I know that they will dry up years down the road and I want to make sure I use them. So here's that orange. Actually, it's a bit more of a red, isn't it, still? But we'll go to yellow now. And this is Hansa yellow. Let's just take, and this is when I was playing with spray inks when I first started. And let's just go over top with some yellow. And I'm gonna just get rid of this orange down here. That turned out really neat, didn't it? With that magenta under there. So without trying, we're exploring. We're just being open-minded and letting go. So this is gonna probably be more orange than yellow. I'm going over top of those homemade inks, and the color is interesting. I wouldn't say it's a color I use much in my work, that greenish color. That would be a great leaf in a collaged floral piece. It would be really interesting next to some beautiful colors, just this area right here. Okay, so here's our next sheet. So we're just creating these mini backgrounds to go back to, and you may just want to continue painting a painting over top of them, because this process may inspire you to keep going and not set them aside and let them dry. You just maybe want to keep playing. This is a good thing to do in the summer outside. And do I want to try and etch in? Maybe not. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry. And here's a large cut up painting. I always paint on both sides, and there's already quite a bit of yellow in here. Let's just be generous. And I'm just gonna pull up my sleeves. Let's see if I have another, I'll just use, let's see, do I have another card? I have a palette knife. Oh, here's one. I always think, oh, I sure hope I got all the money off these cards. That's what I'm thinking. That's so funny. Okay, so we are getting this yellow down, and I'm really liking how the light blue is coming through, so I'm not going to go over the whole thing. It's already becoming something so interesting. I might add some white because I like the light yellow look. Might just add some fluid white on here because what the heck. And oh, that's interesting. Whoops, I dropped quite a bit of fluid white. I feel like I liked it without the white. So I am learning. I would not use the fluid acrylic again because I don't like that look as much. So I'm gonna get rid of that on another sheet of paper. Let's see. You know what I might do is grab another scrap piece. And this one has some golds, and I'm gonna just pick up that white. Try something different. And I don't think I would repeat that. This actually looks more interesting now. So I'll let this one dry, and I'm gonna go back to, maybe I'll do back to my orange. Let's just see. And I don't really like that as much. So, but this is experiment, right? Experimenting. So that's a lot of orange down there. And so I just took another sheet and I'm smushing them together, and I find this interesting. I'll use that in future work, and I'll probably, because I really liked this yellow and the way the pastels were coming in behind, I will keep that. I'm not going to do any more over top of that, and I'm making quite a mess here. Whenever I do videos, I get much more messy because I am thinking less about keeping my space and myself tidy. I'm gonna add more yellow. We'll do more yellow down here. And I'll see if I can get back some of that yellow that I had. There, we brought a little bit back. It's actually a really nice, I like that better now. If I needed yellow for like a center of a collage flower at a later date, that would be a great piece right there. I'm gonna put the yellow back down over here. I have done entire paintings with a credit card. I sold one, the whole thing was done with a credit card, and it was quite a large painting. It was super fun. I would do a bunch of line work. So for instance, you know, creating etching like this. You can get some really, really neat effects. It's almost like using a palette knife. So check that out. And then if you don't like what you did, you can just go back over top. Okay, so the key is to have thick enough paint that's not quite dry, that's just starting to dry, and that's how you do the etching. So I'm gonna leave the etching down here, but I'm gonna remove it from here. And I'm gonna get rid of this piece of paper. I'm just gonna clean off the paint on my card here, and I'll let that dry and I'll use that again. And then this one has quite a bit, and I'm just going to smush it down. And I'm liking the texture that I'm getting here. So this is a place of play and discovery and non-judgment. If you are really looking at it and you're like, ugh, this is so ugly, I don't like it, this is a waste of time, why am I doing this? Just go back to, you know, instead of closing your eyes and meditating, this is your practice of maybe connecting with yourself, practicing mindfulness, grabbing a color that you love and maybe going back over top and just remembering it's paper, remembering to just play. Okay, we could do a couple more maybe. So we could do some greens. black paper is also fun to play with. You just need to use really bright colors for black paper, so I'll probably not do that right now. See if I have a good size paper to do here. This, oh my gosh, I did this when I first started painting. I was playing with stencils. This looks really commercial to me, and I can't wait to go over top of it. So I can feel it's 90 to 98 pounds, so it's a lighter paper. It will be great for collage, and I'm just gonna put a bunch of this green and this turquoise on quite thick. And I'll go back to one of my gift cards that doesn't have as much color on this side, and just with a flat technique, not overthinking it, pushing down and moving the paint and revealing whatever wants to come through underneath. And immediately I want to use a darker green, so I'm going to grab another green, maybe this one. This is Artist Loft Phthalo Green. And I'm quite generous with paint. And I'm already really liking what's going on in here. So whatever play was underneath is now becoming a new painting with lots of history, you know, or new handmade collage papers, or like, well, hand painted, right? Not handmade, I guess, but. Okay, so this would be a really great piece for collage, you know, maybe a landscape, cutting out this area. There's just so much going on in here. And it's kind of breathing new life into older work that may have been sitting around, for me, just sitting in a pile in a box. And I want to use it now that I know I'm more confident in doing collage. So for me, I'm going to use these bases for collage. But for you, you may just want to practice acrylic painting. You know, just new colors, new layers, just play. So I'll let that dry. And I'm going to sign off for now because I have been on here quite a while. And with the time change, I know it's going to throw me off for the rest of the day. So thank you so much for sticking with me. I hope I inspired you in some way, and we will see you very soon.